Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jesus Gallimore, drummer, musician, most importantly, before that, composer, and drum author. Um, Today, I come to you pretty much just to present to you the two books that I've written in this past year, with my first one being Paradiddles, Frameworks, Phrases, and Ideas, and my second book, which should be coming out very soon, 8 to 1 Warm-Ups for the Modern Drummer. So today, I want to talk about both books in depth, show you guys the ideas that are in this book and the inspiration for each of these books. So to start with my first book, Paradiddles, Frameworks, Phrases, and Ideas, the reason that I wrote this book and I was inspired to write it was because, first off, there's not a lot of books out there that just focus specifically on paradiddles. There's very few. For example, Dave Tuff has a super old paradiddle book that came out, not too sure about the time, maybe 60s, 70s. And I don't think you could find it. When I found that book, it was as a PDF, and that book is great, by the way. I would highly recommend any drummer who just want to work on just the paradiddle rudiments in duple and triple meter, get that book. It is very good. If you could get your hands on it, whether it's PDF or physical, get it. It's very good. Aside from that, Pete Lockett has Symmetrical Stickings, which is superb as well. That's another one to recommend. And actually, personally, I'm going to run through that book starting now or June. Most likely now, because I like to study that kind of stuff. Gary Chafee, Stickings, the Even Meter, which is the green book, and then the latest one that came out with, the Odd Meter book. In a way, that those books are hybrids, but they do have sections where you practice your paradiddles and the extensions. And the other book that I could think of is Louis Belson's book. That's pretty much up. Oh, and sorry about that. Phil Mascherano has one, but it's more of an extension of the double paradiddle. Or sorry, the paradiddle diddle. There we go. It's an extension of that, which is called Paradiddle and the Magic Sticking. I believe he sells it on his website. That's also one I highly recommend. There's a lot of cool phrases written in that book, and it's very musical. And it's actually one of the few books where it gets the paradiddle, the double paradiddle, and the triple paradiddle, and it shows it to you in triple meter as well, which creates some very interesting and some crazy phrases. So, in my experience, I've only seen those books, which were like 4 or 5 that I mentioned. So, seeing that, I was actually inspired to write this book. Another reason was, I see a lot of people when they do phrases, when they create phrases with the paradiddles, they really only use the paradiddle and the paradiddle diddle, which is cool, but I see that a lot of drummers neglect the triple paradiddle and the double paradiddle. And those two rudiments, although they're quite tricky to play compared to the single and the paradiddle diddle, man, you could create some very interesting phrases if you start messing around with the singles in those two rudiments. If you start moving it around, you can really create some interesting phrases. You can create some melodic phrases as well if you start mixing and matching and moving the accents around. It's something that really got me thinking, and that's one of the reasons as well, just to expand the rhythmic phrases, the melodic phrases, once you start moving the accents. And last but not least, the other thing that inspired me to write the book was a great South Florida drummer, David Chiverton, my instructor, drum teacher, whom I call Drum Dad as well, Rodolfo Zuniga. Like, those guys inspired me to, man, really search around and see what you could do, especially Chiverton. He's pretty much the reason why I wrote this book, because I recall seeing a video of him playing some kind of a phrase. It was an Instagram video on one of his gigs, and that kind of got my attention. And then I started noticing, oh, he's doing this, he's doing that, and that was one of the main reasons as well. But enough of that. The book is pretty much broken into a couple of sections. The first section is pretty much showing my favorite accents patterns. As you see there, there's 2 for the single, there's about 8 for the double, and there's 8 for the triple. And then based off of that, now once you start diving deeper in the book, you start practicing these combinations. You start practicing, for example, the first framework, which is called mirror images. What you're actually doing, and I think this is a better page, there we go, is that you're comparing single paradiddles to double paradiddles, and you're doing it in a set amount. For example, 1 is 4, 1 is 4. The next line, you're doing 3 and 3, 2 and 2, and then 1 and 1. And for the first section of the book, you're actually doing that with the singles to double, single to triple, and then double to triple. And that's a great way to pretty much see how each hand stacks up, see how the stickings sound when you compare it to one another. And for the most part, you'll most likely be playing that 1-to-1. That's probably what you're going to be using a lot if you really get into this book and you start practicing this kind of phrasing. So that's one section of the book. The second section is pretty much the one that you're going to use a lot, and it's I'll probably say it's like the second or my third favorite section of the book, and it's basically shifting accents. Here we go. So what's happening in this section is that you're getting just one of the paradiddles. It's either the singles or the doubles or the triple. And what's happening is that if you remember in chapter 1, or the first section that I showed you guys, you saw these combinations: 8 doubles, 8 triple. There's only 2 singles. What's happening in this chapter is that you're pretty much constraining yourself to that rudiment, and then you're playing the different accents back to back. So for example, if you see the double one, here's the regular accent, and then here's another variation, and then you just repeat that. Here you go again, different accent patterns, you're just repeating that. Here you go again, same thing. And that's how the chapter of this book, I'm sorry, works out, pans out like that. Most likely you're going to be using this a lot. I actually highly recommend getting this section and just messing around on the practice pad, on the drum set. I guarantee you there's a lot of cool phrases that you can find out here and will help you make more musical phrases with these paradiddles. The third section of this book, which is to me is the section of death, is let's read. And what's happening here is that if you notice, the double paradiddle is 6 note long, 16 notes. The single paradiddle is 4 notes long, 16 notes, and the triple paradiddle is 8 16 notes long. So by getting those values, you could actually assign each of those paradiddles a note length. So for example, the quarter note is perfect for the single paradiddle. The dotted quarter is perfect for the double paradiddle, and the half note is perfect for the triple paradiddle. So what's happening is we could actually use reading text, as you see here. For the most part, it's quarter notes, like I said earlier, half notes, and dotted quarter notes. Now, of course, to expand a little bit, I actually added a section on eighth notes. So if you see an eighth note, you could actually fill in the eighth notes. You could use different accent patterns. I put 4 of them here, right below, so that you could use them. For example, if you see an eighth note, you could, no accents, why not? Accenting the beginning of each one, accenting the upbeat, or just accent them all, why not, right? So that is an option, and this section to me is really the main part of this book. Or I wouldn't say the main part, but it's one of the most challenging parts, and it's one that will really force you to work hard on this, to really get a feel for each of the paradiddles, their length, to really string them together to make phrases of them. There's a couple of texts here which, now that I see it right now, it's kind of wild, but they really create some interesting phrases. And to me, out of all the sections of this book, this is the section where this will help you grow a lot. Just mixing and matching and just trying different things out, seeing how certain paradiddles go over the bar, and things like that. Especially the tied notes that I have here, a couple of tied rhythms. So that's something I'm really proud of writing this, and I highly recommend going through. Another part of the section is pretty much just orchestrating. Nothing much to say here. It's just a couple of ideas of how to orchestrate in a drum set, cymbals and snare drum, toms, things like that. There is one section that's kind of crazy, exploring the book in triplet subdivisions. I'm sorry about that, because when you go through the first half of the book, you're pretty much playing in 16 notes throughout. So I did add the triplet subdivision. I do recommend, once you get to this part of the book, get those paradiddles from the first part and see how they feel in triplet form. It will be needed for the next framework and pretty much the final part of the book, which is the paradiddle pyramid. At least to me, I know I've gone through it before, the paradiddle pyramid. I just don't know exactly who taught it to me or how I found out. But to me, it was almost kind of common sense to say, hey, practice your singles, practice your doubles, go to your triples, and just cycle it like that. So this part of the book pretty much runs through that. It picks one accent pattern for each of the paradiddles, and we just play through it. Now, that's not the end of that section of that framework. The second part of it is now we start alternating accents on each of the paradiddles. As you see here, one accent, two accent, 1, 2. Here you go, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then here, 1, 2, 1, 2. So that is something that will really challenge your grasp of how could you move between each of the accents. Your elasticity, that's the word that I'm trying to find. How smooth can you move from one to the other? This one will really challenge that aspect of it. And then the third part is what I call the paradiddle hourglass. With the paradiddle pyramid, you always start from the single to the double to the triple. In this case, we're starting from the triple to the double to the single, double, triple. And that creates an interesting dynamic where now you're forced to kind of pretty much think of the pyramid upside down, pretty much like an hourglass, where it starts big, it thins out, and then it goes like a curve. So this is a really challenging exercise in the sense that it could be long depending on which variation you do, because of course I also wrote that in triplet form. And as you see, it's a page long, so you really gotta have your mind into it. This section will really not only test out your hands and how can you move from different accents, but also your endurance as well. Mentally, how long could you focus on it, and physically as well. And then finally, of course, the last part is just like in part 2 where we alternated accents. We do the same with this part of the book in the hourglasses, or the hourglass, I'm sorry, where the first paradiddle has one accent, and then the second paradiddle has another one, and then so on, and then so forth. And that's pretty much the book. It's really about getting better. It's really about getting these paradiddles and being like, oh, hey, look, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. It's getting these paradiddles and pretty much putting yourself in a small box and saying, hey, look, I got these 3 tools. What can we build with this? And that was the idea for my first book, Paradiddles, Frameworks, Phrases, and Ideas. Now, on to my second book, which will be released soon, 8-to-1 Warm-Ups for the Modern Drummer. Do not worry, you will not be seeing this this line. This is an author's copy, an author's proof copy. I like getting a proof copy before sending these books out or selling them on Amazon. I actually like getting them and then just get a pencil and find whatever mistakes, whether it's a typo or an accent in a different place on an exercise. I actually like getting the author's copy and just writing and making notes and all sorts of things. But back to this book. This book, like I mentioned to close friends, is a happy little accident. The inspiration for this book was from a fantastic drummer, Quincy Davis. He teaches at the University of North Texas, I believe. He also has a fantastic album on his Spotify. I highly recommend checking it out. And he also has a great YouTube channel for jazz drummers where he talks about playing the bass drum, the right cymbal, lifting the right cymbal, how he uses his fingers for faster tempos. What else he does? The inspiration for this book, which I'll mention now, soloing, how certain drummers would comp. He has I think a video where he goes through how Philly Joe, Elvin Jones, how they comp. He goes through jazz fills, brushes. Man, it's fantastic. I highly recommend that you subscribe to his channel and check out the material that he sends out. So one day he takes out a video where he does this 8-to-1 exercise, and basically the 8-to-1 exercise is you're playing a certain number of strokes on each hand. In this case, you're starting with 8, then you're going to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And once you reach 1, then you start going back up if you want to. From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, finally 8. So, with this exercise, you're playing those certain number of strokes for each hand. So, when I saw the video the first time, I was like, oh, that's actually an interesting way to warm up and to work out your hands and to make sure things are right. That's cool. And then I let it play again, and I just sat there, and I'm like, huh, okay, second time, that's good. And then I go through the third time, and then my reaction starts changing. I'm like, huh. My brain is starting to mess around and think of ways to get it. And then the fourth time, it finally hit me, or probably more chances later. I'm pretty sure it's later. That's when I started clicking. Where, man, I thought to myself, what if I change the accent? What about in a group of 8, let's break them up into 4, and then one accent starting here, and then the accent on the 5th note and the 8th note. And then let's see how it happens if we do the same permutation on 7. Starting on 1, and then we don't have 8 notes now, we have 7, so what about 1 and 3, and then the same thing with 6, 1, and then that's where my brain starts thinking of possibilities. And then on top of that, in the end of Quincy's video, just to go back quick to his video, he starts adding the feet. And then, not to go back to now, that's when I'm like, oh, okay. So we have this pyramid and these different accents, right? Okay, so let's build and let's try to find ways to incorporate the feet. So this book, like I mentioned, was a happy little accident. It is about 100 some pages long, 8 sections. On each section, there's pretty much about 10 to 11 exercises. So the first section of the book will always be the main pyramid that you'll be using. For example, here you go. And then some instruction on top as to how it works and things like that. But now once you start going to the later parts, that's when we start adding the feet. For example, now we're adding the feet on the start of each measure. On the second one, as you see, I've broken each section into groups. You see, here's a group of 8. Here's notes 1 through 4. And then here is 6 through 8. I'm sorry about that. And then we're adding the bass drum to the beginning of each group. And if you keep seeing down the page, it holds true. and then we keep going into the rabbit hole. Instead of starting each of the feet on the beginning of the groups or the beginning of each measure, what about moving into the end? So now we're doing the opposite. Here starts a group, bam, note. For 7, same thing. Starts a group, bam, note. Starts a group, bam, note, excuse me. And then so on and so forth, and that's how the book plays out. Part 5. Now we're playing the bass drum on the end of each one. Part 6. Now we play on the first note of the first group and the last note of the second group. And then we completely flip everything upside down in chapter 7, or part 7, excuse me, where instead of the right hand is with the bass drum and the left hand is with the hi-hat, the right hand is with the hi-hat, the left hand is with the bass note, and it all begins again. There we go, part 7. Part 8. Part 9. Part 10. And then finally, part 11. And so pretty much that's how the book works. It's not heavy in text. It's really like a workout book, in my opinion. And the way that I see it, it's like a workout book where, like, oh, we have this one exercise. Let's see how we could do different things with it. The cool thing about this book is that you don't need the drum set to do this. You could actually just use your hands and your feet, and man, you could practice this pretty much anywhere. Whether you have a practice pad or not, you could just use your hands and your feet. So that's one of the cool things that it kind of hit me when I was writing this book. It's like, oh man, I could actually take this anywhere. So yeah, this is 821 Paradiddles, Frameworks, Phrases, and Ideas. And you could purchase both books, physical copy on Amazon. Paradiddles, Frameworks, and Phrases, Ideas is already out. 821 should be coming out in about 3 days. I already submitted it to Amazon. You could also buy the Kindle version of Paradiddles, Frameworks, and Phrases, so if you want a digital copy. And to kind of have a different variation this time around, the digital copy for 821, I will be setting it as a PDF for $5. I also will be doing it with Paradiddles, Frameworks, and Phrases. So if you want a digital PDF of any of these two versions, you could send me an email at GallimorJesus@yahoo.com or GallimorJesus Gmail, or send me a DM on Instagram and we'll figure something out. Physical copies are $11.99 at Amazon.com as well. So here you go. Thank you very much for viewing this video. Like, subscribe. I'll make sure to keep posting more content. Hopefully very soon I'll be posting videos on the Paradiddles book and on the 821, and as well as in my website I have many lessons that I would like to also share with you guys. If you do want to visit my website, is jesusgallimore.wordpress.com, and my YouTube, Jesus Gallimore. Please like, subscribe. I'll be sharing more content soon, so thank you very much. Peace out.